Well, this is another response video, basically. I think I remember microphones by now. So this one's, the subject's equality, but it's really an extension of the purpose videos. And I'm I mean, first off, I guess I'd say, yeah, Nick, I'm not really obliging you to, you're not some terrible impediment to me or some problem. I mean, I like you, and you're an intelligent guy, and the conversation's been basically good. I'm just very results and purpose oriented. Yeah, I've been doing this my whole life, basically. I've been arguing with people for my whole life. I mean, it's been trying to persuade people of something I see. I see it. And so if I give you an analogy, if people live their lives in a very personal way, and I guess I never really had that option. I mean, I'll tell you a little quick story. When I was a kid, lots of weird stuff went on in my head. I mean, I had this mystical experience, where for a number of years in my childhood, I had these spots, these little dots, these little pellets of different colors would just float through the room in intricate patterns, flowing, swirling, and it was like it had a personality. It was like it was an entity, and it was it was there every night, and my eyes would be open in the dark, and I would see this, and it was really interesting. But anyway, to go with that, every night I would also contemplate what was happening right now on planet Earth. I'd be thinking about people dying of cancer, and people being run over by cars, and accidents, and all kinds of things that would be happening to people. Because as soon as I became aware of this vulnerability we had, I extended that understanding not only to my own jeopardy, but I mean, as part of that was trying to appreciate how this jeopardy got imposed. And it really, that's sort of how I knew there was, it leads also to the whole thing where you just find the whole God concept idiotic, because all these good people are horribly ruined by God and destroyed and annihilated in brutal and awful ways. And I knew of my own basic innocence. I mean, I knew I wasn't out to hurt anybody, and I also knew I felt this vulnerability. I mean, it could be me next. Who's next? Who's the next victim? Who is life going to, torment and brutalize next? And I guess maybe part of this is just, I grew up in Louisiana, and lots of wildlife around, lots of insects and bugs, and so you see this life drama going on all the time. I mean, it's always around you. And I was really uncomfortable with it. And maybe I was just too judgmental too soon, but it seemed really imperfect and unorganized and chaotic. And so that's my history. That's why, to me, it's so obvious. It's because it's always been there. I mean, it was common sense for me. It wasn't anything I had to think about. It wasn't something I had to, study to realize. It was always there. And so that's part of this obstacle in communicating something, is that, maybe I'm like the nutty, loony religious people who have some stupid vision, and so they're not really acting on faith anymore, and yet they're wondering why other people aren't having faith when, well, obviously they're not even having faith because they had some miraculous experience that convinces them that God exists. And so I guess in a sense it's because it's innate inside of me. I don't I don't need to be convinced of it. I didn't need to be convinced of it. There was no convincing process. It just was the natural conclusion. I didn't have to be persuaded of it. And so I guess that's sort of the roots of even my notion of equality, is that, these are feeling beings that you're seeing at the shopping center. And if you go to the hospital and extend that same process of thinking about these other brains, I don't think, can help but be a bit depressed, a bit overwhelmed when you extend your empathy to these people in this circumstance and realize how you would not want to be in that circumstance, and how you would feel if you were. And so I guess I would say part of me is irritated that I have made you somehow, this conversation has made you more at ease and given you even more bliss. And I'm trying to make people, you say it relieves some guilt, your philosophy has relieved you of guilt, and I'm trying to impose exactly the opposite. I want people to feel guilty for being selfish. I want people to look, we're all going to be selfish. It's a given. But I mean, logically, we just really have to recognize the basic facts. The basic facts are, we are all in this together. We're all equal in terms of what we are experiencing. Like I said, it's not a perfect equality. It's an essential equality. And we can't, because we're not personally experiencing it, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And there's just too much of that in our heads, where it's too easy for us to discount what goes on because it isn't happening to us personally. And so to Matt, I would say I have a huge flaw in your social mind philosophy, is that I just don't see it. You can't feel somebody else's pain. You can empathize. You can create some sort of understanding of it, but if you're not understanding the vulnerability and the horror of it, then you're really not gaining anything from the experience. And there's like I said, this equation is not irrelevant. There's not, we can't just sit here and say we have these status quo rules, and you just say, okay, the status quo is the way it should be. And I'm just arguing that the status quo has been an arbitrary decision. I mean, the subtleties of stupid politics, the subtleties of cultural revolutions and evolutions, and technology revolutions, and that we really haven't established anything in an ordered and disciplined manner. I mean, the internet to me is a perfect example. It is completely been established. The rules of the game are completely arbitrary. The whole thing has been put together, with spit and wax, as they say, and and so it does have no order. We have a popularity contest. It's just, the indexing is ludicrous. The whole thing is just, it's 1/10, 1/5, 1% of its potential is being used. So anyway, but these are all, I know it ends up being politics. It ends up being social engineering. It means all these negative words people are going to throw, but it's important, because the status quo shouldn't be the default winner. I mean, we should analyze the social order, and we should say, okay, yeah, if something's broken, let's fix it. I mean, that's not asking too much, is it? And if we fix it in the context where we have a certain understanding, of the facts, that we can't have this class system, this system that establishes a nobility and says, yes, well, they're perpetually entitled, and this other class is perpetually going to be in deprivation, and it's all okay, and because that's the nature of things, and that's the way it all happened, that's the way it turned out, so let's all celebrate the way it turned out. And even though you're doom and gloom in the sense you see no purpose, there's always a purpose, and like I said, it's how we fish. I mean, even if we're exiting the stage, we ought to exit the stage gracefully, not like slobs. So, time's up, but okay, moving on.